Hello, everybody. Welcome back and welcome in. Thanks for hitting the download button one more time. I'm Pastor Dave, sitting with my friend Randall, the armor bearer, and we are
They That Believe.
You can find us at theythatbelieve.com. That's our homepage. Also, facebook.com/theythatbelieve. We talk about church culture. This is where church culture meets pop culture, entertainment news, geek news, weird news. I am coming fresh off the heels of the Southern Fried Pop Culture and Comic Con event. I think I got that right. Mm-hmm. Southern Fried Comic Con, they call it. Comic book convention that we had locally in Jackson, Tennessee. This was our first year to go. I don't think it's the first year they've had it. They've done it at least 1 year, maybe 2 years, but had a good time. So let me cover some of that. Got to meet some cool folks. The costumes were great. We saw, who did we see? Fat Wolverine. There was
no Fat Green Lantern, though.
No Fat Green Lantern. Fat Indiana Jones. He was there. Fat Wolverine was great because it was the yellow and blue spandex. It was, it weren't no Hugh Jackman black leather jacket. It was
a lot of self-confidence there.
It was the bright blue, bright yellow spandex, buddy. Woo! But, God bless him for loving it and having the courage to get out and do that.
Don't know. I wouldn't do it, so.
Okay. Well, let me start here. Before we even walk in the door, we're pulling through the parking lot, and there, sitting in the outside the event on the grass, is this big 4x4 jacked up GMC pickup truck, brown, 80s model. And it was a replica of the truck driven by Lee Majors in the television show The Fall Guy.
Love that show.
Do you remember it? Because I thought this is where our age differential may.
I love that show. I used to watch that all the time.
Tell everybody what you know or what you remember about The Fall Guy.
The Fall Guy, Lee Majors played a character who was a stuntman. And in his side gig, he would help folks out, kind of like the A-Team would. Right?
He had a PI, private investigator. Mm-hmm. He was a private investigator.
And they always had really good-looking girls on there.
Heather Thomas.
Yeah. And had that big jacked-up truck, and he'd have the jetpack in the opening sequence. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. He sang the theme, sort of like Chuck Norris with Walker, Texas Ranger.
Yeah.
He sort of halfway sung the theme.
Right.
The unknown stuntman. Mm-hmm. His gimmick was he was a Hollywood stuntman by trade, and had picked up, as you mentioned, the side business, working as a private investigator, I guess, like Rockford Files or any of that kind of thing. Yeah.
All those good shows from back then.
It was a popular trope of television shows. Hunter, Fred Dreyer, he was a football player, wasn't he? Right. Turned private investigator.
Equalizer.
Yeah, everybody was somebody turned private investigator. Now, Equalizer is where you get maybe more closer to A-Team, because he worked kind of underground, didn't he? Or sort of off the books.
Right.
So Lee Majors, the Fall Guy, Colt Seavers was his name. Great TV name, Colt Seavers.
Oh, I'm trying to remember. Was it Heart to Heart?
Uh-huh. That was Robert Wagner and, you're going to make me forget, Stephanie. I'm going to have to look it up. Heart to Heart. They were rich folks, though, right?
Right.
They were wealthy, and they had a private investigative.
And Moonlighting.
Remington Steele.
What was the one?
Was he a private investigator? Was that something different?
I think he was. Wasn't he a cop?
No. The thing with that was he was kind of a mystery man. Like his identity was not really known. You know what I mean? Like Remington Steele. It was a mystery as to who he was or where he'd come from.
The one I'm thinking of had like two brothers in it. One of them was kind of a bald guy.
Simon and Simon.
That's right. That's what I'm thinking of. I used to watch that all the time.
And so you see Simon and Simon. Well, not actually brothers in real life, but merely portrayed them on television. There's a line from South Park or something. Yeah, everybody was a private investigator.
That's right.
So anyway, Fall Guy, he was a stuntman, turned private investigator, and he had this awesome 4-wheel drive GMC pickup truck. It was brown, and on the hood, he had his emblem or his logo. It was like an eagle taking flight, and it said Fall Guy Stuntman Association. And sure enough, that truck was parked. The replica was parked right outside the event. And I'm told that it's owned by a guy that lives in Jackson. And apparently he keeps it nearby somewhere. But as we're driving by through the parking lot, I'm with Gretchen and Nate and one of our friends, one of our church kids, Jaden, who went with us. And I started to tell them immediately because it punched me right in the
Right.
childhood.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, Fall Guy. And so I went into telling them about the Fall Guy lunchbox that I had, which was one of my prized possessions as a child. I was so proud and loved that Fall Guy lunchbox so much. Back when they were the old metal.
Right. Do you remember how
lunchbox.
much of a status symbol your lunchbox was?
I don't really recall that where we were. Everybody had ones they liked, but I don't ever really remember anybody improving their status by having one. Or
Well, I remember you get made fun of if you had the Smurfs lunchbox.
well, yeah.
Or the girls have the Barbie lunchbox or something. But
I don't think I knew anybody that had one like that.
I had Kit. I had Knight Rider.
Oh, okay. I don't think I ever had a Knight Rider one. I had a Star Wars one at some point. Oh, maybe a G.I. Joe. I don't remember. But the Fall Guy one, I do remember. That was my favorite. So I'm telling them all about this. I'm getting all excited, telling about the Fall Guy lunchbox. And I think I even got in trouble one year. What do you do with those metal lunchboxes? You hit each other
You
with
beat
them.
the mess out of each
Yeah,
other.
you
with
knock each other in the side of the head with them. And sure enough, as we got out and walked over to the truck, sitting up in the dash on the window was the Fall Guy lunchbox. Oh, man, it was so awesome. So, yeah, we took some pictures and went inside the event, bought a handful of comics, mostly just walking around looking. The mood really good, a lot of nice people. Mm-hmm. There was a guy there that was hosting some kind of, or what am I trying to say, promoting. They have these specific Doctor Who conventions, and I walked by the table and was kind of looking around at what he had, and he asked me the one question probably in my entire life that I've never been prepared to answer. And he said, "You watch Doctor Who?" And I was like, well, the easy answer is no, but people that love that really love
Yeah.
It's a thing where if you got to tell somebody no to that question, you're going to disappoint them.
Right.
Because he was all excited, and I was like, "Yeah, no." But I have a lot of friends who watch Doctor Who, and
Have you ever tried to get into Doctor Who?
I haven't. I've never even turned it on. I'm
I've tried
sure
to
I
watch
would
a
enjoy
couple,
it.
but I can't get into it.
Why not?
I just didn't. It's not me. And I love those real kind of campy BBC shows, but I can't do that
Are
one.
you just talking about the older stuff, not any of the? Because there's been a whole bunch of doctors, and
It started
there's
in
a
the
newer
60s,
show.
I think, didn't it?
Yeah, there's a new show on with a new doctor. I don't know. I think if I watched it, I would probably like it, but I'm so far behind on all the other stuff that have said I wanted to watch anyway. So, what else? There was a handful of people from the Walking Dead there. There were, I'm trying to think, 4 or 5 people. Most of them, or all of them, are employed portraying walkers. Mm-hmm. That's their gig.
Would that be an awesome job?
There's a certain number of people who work on that show who are walkers at any given time. They're zombies. You may have seen them in one episode biting somebody, and in another episode they're dressed up a little differently, biting somebody else. They were there. Chris Harrelson is one of the more well-known ones. And another guy named Santiago Cirillo, I think I've got his name right. He is in real life, is an Army veteran, super neat guy, and he actually is like an actor on the show. He's not on there now because I guess he was killed off, or he was in he was in the battle in season 3 where the governor came to seize the prison.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he was in the shootout and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So they had a Q&A panel with them, and I actually got to ask the first question. It was really strange because there's so many people around. There's so many fans. As you might imagine, everywhere you turn at these places is Walking Dead stuff. That thing is just huge.
Yeah, it's really blown up.
So my question to them was, we talked during our Halloween episode about horror movies and some of the things that we liked. And I mentioned from childhood the George Romero's zombie movies, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. Now, those are very popular and still hold a large place in pop culture. But if people don't like horror movies, or if they have an aversion to gore or blood, they don't watch those movies. They're successful, but yet they have an audience.
Right.
Now, this Walking Dead thing is the #1 show on the network. People, that you would never think that would never have watched horror movies or been into anything like this watch this show.
Right.
So my question to them was kind of, what is the appeal? Because if you'd have pitched this to me, if you'd have come into a network TV meeting and said, we want to do a primetime network show or cable show based around, you know, a band of survivors trying to outrun flesh-eating zombies, I would have laughed at you.
Right.
I would have said, no, this is not a show for broad appeal. And of course I would have been horribly wrong.
Right.
And their answers, not surprising, actually what you might expect, with one good insight, I thought. Santiago Cirillo, the actor that I was talking about, basically put it down to story. You know, it's not really about the zombies, it's about the people. You could change the premise. Let's say it wasn't zombies, it's something else. And you put the same people in dire, desperate circumstances or in similar scenarios, and the drama, the human drama, is still there.
Do you think they said zombie in the pitch meeting, or do you think they said like infected people? Or...
No, they would have to, because that's the this is The Walking Dead is based and founded off of a comic book, The Walking, which is still, interestingly enough, show's still on the air. Walking Dead still being published, and there's that race between, or that counterbalance between the books and what's on television. And
right.
I think for the most part they've been pretty true from what I've been told and what I've heard. I'm not well read on the Walking Dead series. Now, Chris Harrelson, the guy that is known to play a bunch of walkers, he pointed out that in addition to the story and the people, is that everything on that show, by his evaluation, is top notch. The writing, the cinematography, the photographic directing, the effects.
Right. It all looks real.
He said everything on that show is first class, grade A. They don't skimp anywhere. And because of that, basically he's saying what Santiago said is the human drama taken with expert writing and elevated, with effects and good production. He said the production balanced on top of that human story. It speaks to people, and maybe speaks to people in a way that some of the other movies wouldn't have. And I think too, given the fact that, and they pointed this out as well, that Romero's zombie movies now have it's been a long time. Well, he's made some more recent ones, but am I boring?
Oh, sorry. I'm out of coffee at the house.
Now that, once he took a break from those, in the 80s or 90s, as it were, that the zombie movies we got after that tended to be parody or funny, and this show brought an earnestness back to it.
It seems like the zombie talk and stuff started, though, before the show came on, like a resurgence in the zombie culture. I'm trying to think, is it Albert Brooks' son that wrote that zombie apocalypse survival guide or something?
Oh, yeah. No. Who was that? I know what you're thinking of. But
it came out before the show, and that was pretty big deal when it came out.
Yeah, the guide to the apocalypse and the survival guide. Yes, yeah. The engine was being primed,
right,
as it were. I mean, that maybe begs the next question. Could you have done Walking Dead 10 years earlier?
Right.
Or could you have done it in 95? Or could you have done... I don't think you probably couldn't, just because of the level of violence.
Right. And the effects and the stuff they use, I don't think they would have that. It would be a whole lot campier probably back then.
Yeah, I mean, you could get by and get it done, but I don't know. I don't know if we're quite ready. And I'm still surprised. And actually, those guys, now these are the guys that are employed on the show to dress up like zombies and bite people. And more than one or two of them said that there were times when they kind of wondered how far they were going to push the violence. One of them pointed out maybe Chris said that first episode of season 5, it was just like, wow, that they just ratcheted up the violence and the blood so much, which for anybody that's listening, if you're not a big fan of this show, if you're one of those few people that's not really into it, well, you probably already know why you're not watching it, and that's probably a reason. But I've had moments where, and it's not so much that, I guess the level of violence or blood is still on par with what you might get in a movie or something. It's just, you're just not used to seeing it on the small screen on television, especially in a primetime drama that's the #1 show on a network.
You wonder what like HBO would do with it if they had it. How crazy it would get.
Would it be much different?
Yeah, probably language and stuff like that would be different.
Not much. I mean, there's still a lot of swearing on the show. There are some of the upper tier words that they steer clear of, but you still get a few 4-letter words here or there. So what else was going on? There were some cars there. Well, we talked about Fall Guys truck, Speed Racers, Mach 5.
Oh, I love Speed Racer.
That big white car that was there. Oh, they had a great Star Wars exhibit that had, like, I don't know what they are, the big lizard things that the stormtroopers rode on the backs of in the desert.
Oh, yeah.
They had like a life-size one of those with the stormtrooper stuck up on him.
I saw like 3 different R2-D2s in the picture.
What that is there is a R2-D2 builders club, like a organization or a club of people who they build those themselves. So yeah, there were 2 or 3 of them at any given time that were rolling around the floor.
It's kind of neat.
Yeah, and so what those guys do, just like people do with classic cars or models or whatever, they bring them to show them off.
Right.
Look at mine. Oh, that's neat. How did you do this? Well, I did this with mine. And one of them, the one that we saw that was rolling around, I guess he'd put in a speaker and an MP3 player or something in him, because he would play music. He played the Cantina music, but the lights on him flash and work and stuff. And there's just something. It's really weird to be there, to be present. It's almost like, this is going to sound so odd, it's almost like meeting a celebrity, because it's so familiar and so real. Right. You almost want to go, oh, Mr. R2, it's so nice to meet you. You almost want to shake his hand, because it's like meeting somebody that you know. It's really peculiar, which tells you how well of a job they have done giving that piece of metal and plastic personality.
Right, yeah.
Tony Dyson was there, the Englishman that built the original R2-D2.
Oh, really?
In Star Wars, yeah. I didn't talk to him or anything, but just as a point of conversation. They had a Jurassic Park exhibit. They had like the Jeep from Jurassic Park decked out, and there was some lady there from Farscape. Do you know Farscape, the TV show? I know of it, but I don't know anything about it.
I've heard of it, and I remember seeing it like being on TV, but I don't think I ever watched it.
There was a very, very tall, very pretty lady who was, I forget her name even, but she was somebody from Farscape, and they had her banner up, and
that was on Sci-Fi, I think, wasn't it?
I don't know. I think it's on Netflix, maybe still. Maybe I need to go back and look at it. I felt kind of bad because I'm like, I would probably really appreciate seeing this person or meeting her, but I didn't.
There's some of that stuff like the Star Treks. There are so many different Star Treks out at the same time, and I didn't watch hardly any of them. Now I look back, I think, well, maybe that one wasn't so bad.
And oddly enough, Gretchen is into those.
Really?
She watches Deep Space Nine and Voyager. As soon as we got Netflix, the first thing she did was binged on one of them, Voyager, I think it was. I don't know. She likes those shows. They're pretty cool. So I guess that pretty much about covers it. Bought a few books. The size was small, but the entertainment value was really great. Gretchen said she even had a better time than when we went to the one in Nashville. And I guess because we got to participate in the Walking Dead panel, and the Tennessee Blues Brothers were there. If you've ever seen them. Yeah. The local guys that do the Blues Brothers act with a Southern accent. And we watched them. That was a good time. Boys they just weren't interested though, man. I don't know what you do with teenage boys now. It's funny when you go to these places that are loaded with comic books and toys and collectibles and replicas and all this entertainment, and they wanted to sit outside and play on their phones. I don't know, kids, comic books are still selling and doing well, but I just don't see it among kids.
I think grown-ups are buying them more than the kids are.
That's what I'm saying. Why kids are not interested in?
Well, I think they're going to have to expand into the new medium. I mean, you're going to have to be able to have like a comic book on your tablet or something, maybe.
Well, they do. You get digital comics now. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't like those though. But, you're saying that, but I don't think they would sit and read them. I don't have the patience to, maybe.
Yeah, there's nothing like holding an old comic book and popping it open. Something you have, like if you have a collection of them, you might come around to one 10 years after you read it, and it's like brand new all over again,
That's me. I want to feel it and hold it in my hand.
Right.
And now I've got boxes and I've got a collection, and they're all bagged and boarded, or mostly are. And because I want to preserve them, but I'm not one of these guys like, you can't touch them.
Right.
Don't open the box. Don't even look. You've looked long enough at that one. Quit looking at it. I'm not that guy. I mean, I want to hold them in my hand,
right,
and read them, and even get that smell of the ink. Some of
I'm
the
the
newer
same way
ones,
with
I kind of miss that.
The toys and collectibles. What good is it if somebody leaves it in the box? I mean, goodness, just play with the thing.
Yeah, I don't. It's a psychology, and it's real, and it's there, and I appreciate if that makes you happy. You know, then I'm not one to say don't do that. It's an expensive hobby.
Right.
Toys and collectibles are ridiculous now, and they make them for adult collectors.
Right.
And they price them for adult collectors.
People that have jobs and make money.
But, you know, when you're buying, if you're buying a $200, $400, you know, highly articulated action figure or bust or something like that, you're obviously not buying it to play with.
Right.
You're not going to buy a $400 action figure to give to your kid to play with.
Right.
Which is why I'm not into them. I don't really collect toys and collectibles and stuff just for that reason. Those don't bring me a lot of joy. A book I can read. And two, I get a little, it's different psychology for everybody. I like getting in my boxes and organizing them and knowing which issues I have. And there's got to be, if we had a good psychologist in here, he could probably explain to us why some of those things are kind of comforting.
Right.
I don't know what that is.
See, with me, whenever they say something's collectible, that's when I lose interest in it. Like, if it's just something that I think is cool, I'll buy it all day long. But when they say, oh, well, this is collectible, it's like, yeah, I don't want it anymore.
Well, the collectible market or business is pretty much impossible to navigate now.
Right.
Because there's so much stuff that is manufactured, maybe that's what you're touching on, or sold as being collectible. There is virtually, and I hear collectors and business people who sell collectibles and comics and stuff, there's virtually no way to know. You cannot take something and be assured that in 20 years it's going to be worth this.
Right.
Case in point, back in, what was it, the late 80s? Was it the 90s? When did they do Death of Superman?
90s, 92.
Okay.
I think.
So when the Death of Superman issue hit and there was all these variants, I mean, people were buying them up.
I had it, the black.
And I have a copy.
The black cellophane that came with the armband and stickers and
I have a copy in my collection, and it's bagged and boarded, and I like it, and I'm glad it's there. You know how much it's worth? About as much as anything else that's in there.
Right.
But people would buy multiple copies of that, boxes of them, and thinking that.
And not open them and keep them sealed up, and because it came in like a cellophane.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember like 2 days after it came out, it was like worth $100. And then like a month later, it was like $4 again.
So I hear this guy who runs a comic book shop, and he's talking about that, how everybody bought that and bought so many copies of that. And he's like, you know how many issues of those I see now come in the store all the time, constantly.
Right.
Everybody has them, and everybody thinks they're worth something. And he's like, they're not. You know, it's a great issue, special issue, but if you don't enjoy it, you know, if you didn't take time to enjoy it.
If you didn't open it, if you never opened it, why would you even have it? That whole issue was about reading it, you know?
Well, that's where you get into guys who buy multiple copies, and they have variant issues. Like one issue, you have your what am I trying to say? Your standard cover, but then this artist did a cover for it, and this artist. So you got to get your variant cover. I don't do all that.
Right.
And you may have people say that's my reading copy. You know, you have one copy to collect and one copy to read. I don't do all that. I don't have the patience. I don't have the money for it. At least with the books. Not that comics are cheap, but I don't have anything really expensive or too valuable in my collection. Probably nothing in there worth more than $20 at the most.
Yeah.
And that would probably be one or two in the entire thing, which I've made Gretchen and Nate swear up and down. I told them, I said, when I die, don't put these things out in the front yard at a yard sale. You know what I mean? Like,
don't sell them for what I told you I paid for.
Like 50 cents a piece or whatever. I said, at least take the time, find somebody. Well, usually what you can do is there are usually collectors who will buy other collections. And some of the hardcore collectors know of the big collections that exist.
Right.
You know, in the world, and the Smith collection in New York, and the Stevenson collection, and wherever. And when those old timers kick off, everybody goes to war for one to get in those collections and get whatever those people have. Sometimes that's the cool thing too, is a combination. It's not just that you have a Batman 251, which is a valuable comic, but maybe that you have a collection that includes this and this and this and all these combinations. And
But what I've noticed about those is that the ones that are really valuable, really, really collectible, if you will, are the ones that came out like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, where like they weren't meant to be collected. They're meant to be read.
Silver Age.
Yeah. Meant to be read and just thrown away.
And that makes them rare.
Right.
That was before the artists, the names on the books were the icons, the Jack Kirby's,
right,
and the Stan. Well, of course, Stan Lee's name's on everything.
Right.
Stan Lee's name isn't rare, but you get the general idea. And I don't know that there are a whole lot of folks working like that now. Scott Snyder, Jim Lee, one we mentioned. But again, they publish so many issues and all those variant covers, and they kind of flood the market, or that's not really the word for it, but they skew the market in the idea of making things collectible. Mm-hmm. They skew the market so that these things really aren't.
Right.
In that, like with the death of Superman, now everybody that has even a moderate collection has a Death of Superman in it. And they're not valuable, because they're everywhere.
Because they probably made 1 million of them and everybody's got one.
Yeah. And people bought a whole bunch of them.
Right.
Now, if you're in the business of publishing and selling those when they first come out.
Oh, yeah. That's a no-brainer.
You made a lot of money on that. I mean, it's not that it wasn't successful or anything like that. All right, well, let's shift gears. Let's go somewhere else. We hadn't talked about this since we brought it up the first time, but they had the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Did they have they haven't had the ceremony yet, have they?
Well, they named the inductees, though.
Right, but they didn't. We haven't had the event.
No, I don't think so.
Where everybody gets together and plays. Surely not. I would have seen YouTube videos.
Yeah.
You told me earlier, we hadn't discussed it, but you said we were wrong. Now, I couldn't really remember how we pegged them down, so I was kind of like, well, wait a minute. How wrong were we?
We were really, really wrong on one of them.
Well, let me go through these. These were the ultimate nominees. These are the ones that, no, they're not even nominees. They're elected.
Yeah, they're in.
They will be inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame at the ceremony or event. NWA, which was the rap group.
That's when we were super wrong about, because both of us were like, that's never going to happen.
Well, did we say that? I mean, I thought we were both critical of the nomination, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think I felt like it couldn't happen. I mean, I'm kind of not surprised.
Really? I didn't think it was going to happen.
Remember the whole conversation about because of the timing of the movie and all that. So am I completely annoyed by it? Yeah. But, I mean, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Well, it is Cleveland. So.
And in other news, next year, I hear they're going to induct Elvis Presley into the Hip Hop Hall of Fame. So, right? Makes about as much sense, doesn't it? That's completely ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous. So whether you like them or not, they have no place there. Cheap Trick, I think we were all for them. That's great. Now see that makes the show worth going to.
Right.
I want to see those guys. I want to see those guys play. Chicago, I saw Chicago playing on one of the New Year's Eve bashes. Well, it was in Chicago,
right?
Because Gretchen was switching back and forth on the channels, and it was right after they had announced.
Is she one of those has to watch the ball drop in like 3 different time zones? And
well, I think she missed it. I don't think whatever channel was the one that had the Times Square ball. They showed the one at 11. I guess because we're getting that feed on that network,
right? And
then it went off the air. So she's like, "Well, dang, I had to switch over to Chicago." And Chicago was playing in Chicago. So that was pretty neat.
Makes sense.
I guess it looks like they're going to try to ride this thing. You know, because here we are at the New Year's blowout, your new Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees. So you can get a little extra steam.
No, they've always been pretty smart about when to put their stuff out.
Not that they haven't been working, but Deep Purple, no problem with that. And I wonder what we'll get at the show. Wonder who will play. Richie Blackmore. He's still living.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I didn't even think of that. All right, we may get us a good Deep Purple reunion show there.
We might have to actually go to Cleveland.
Nah, well, no, I'm not going to go watch. And Steve Miller. Now that was one of your. I wasn't real big on him, but that was one of your choices.
Yeah, I love Steve Miller.
You're pretty happy about that, or?
Yeah, I'm good with it. I'm good. I'm
Steve
right.
Miller.
Yeah.
All right. What else do we have going on here? We had talked recently about, what was in our Christmas episode, about triggers, because the Charlie Brown Christmas special
Right.
came with a trigger warning because of the strong Christian themes. If you were to watch this and you were unawares, it might hurt you or damage your psyche, and you couldn't go to work the next day because you didn't get the warning. Well, there is a website. I'm trying to remember what it was now. It was some kind of feminist website I'd heard about. I should have I made a note on it like when I heard it several weeks ago. And
They love that too. Some sort of feminist website out there.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. But they have decided to stop using the expression trigger warning.
Oh, is that triggering some people?
People who have been victims of gun violence.
Oh.
So the trigger warning might emotionally harm or trigger an emotional response.
Right.
So
You don't want to do that.
they have decided to now just go with content warning.
Oh.
We have a content warning. So now we're even changing. We're getting politically correct about our political correctness.
Did you see, just going back to the Charlie Brown thing, did you see where they had a school play on this Charlie Brown Christmas? And they had the school play with the Charlie Brown Christmas, and they cut out the part with the scripture in it.
Oh.
But what happened was the audience who was watching the play, when it got to that part, quoted the scripture out loud where you could hear it.
Okay, let me back up. I'm guessing then, tell me, now that I'm hearing kind of the whole story, I'm guessing then they were probably told they couldn't do that. Like,
right.
you can you kids can put on the show, but you can't read
right,
the
probably,
Bible.
Probably something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, see, that makes sense. You had me thinking like it was a bunch of heathen atheist kids. But they would have done it and then paused.
Right.
And then in a show of solidarity and community, okay. Well, that kind of turns that sad story into a sweet story.
Still a good story.
So let's talk about kids and what's appropriate and politically correct. And this one will speak straight to you because you have little girls. Okay, so this is another Dear Abby. We talked about Dear Abby before. What were we talking about, Dear Abby? The dog?
Dog in the birthday party.
Dog went to the birthday party. Okay. So this is a Dear Abby, and it's written by grandparents talking about their granddaughter. And I thought this would be appropriate for you. I know this sounds to me like something your opinion would seem to be more insightful than mine, I would think, because you have little girls. Our son and his wife have blessed us with a darling 6-year-old granddaughter, Sophie. Sophie in quotation marks. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Protect the innocent, yes.
Remington Steele. Let's call her Remington Steele. Our darling 6-year-old granddaughter, Remington Steele, who is the love of our lives. We live nearby and are very close. When we received her kindergarten school photo, she had on, now check this out, heavy lipstick and light eyeshadow. 6. My husband and I couldn't contain our shock. Her parents said they thought she looked beautiful, and Sophie was made up the way because, quote, she wanted to. Mm-hmm. We were speechless. When we pick her up on weekends, she sometimes wears makeup too. So this is a regular thing, not just for the picture. It makes her look like a 30-year-old.
At 6?
That's what they said. We think that wearing it while playing dress up is fun. Mm-hmm. But doing it outside the home takes away from her natural beauty. What are your thoughts on this? So what we have here, before we look at Abby's response, I'll ask you for yours. So what we have here is a 6-year-old basically wearing heavy makeup, like a grown woman, even for school photos, and apparently she goes out like this. The grandparents say that it makes her look like a 30-year-old. Their response when they said they saw her, they received her kindergarten school photo. She had heavy lipstick and light eyeshadow. My husband and I couldn't contain our shock. So to you, sir. Speechless, shocking. These are all words they used. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this?
6 is young. I mean, I've got an 11-year-old, and she has just started using eyeliner, and she uses it extremely heavy. But I mean, how you going to tell her you need to lighten up on that? And I've got a 9-year-old who will purposely put makeup in her bag and go out of the house and put it on outside the house.
Okay.
She'll sneak it on.
Does she have to do that? I mean, because you prohibit it, or does she just do that on her own because she figured you would?
I don't mind if they want to play with makeup and put it on, and it's not heavy, but she likes it extremely heavy. And my 6-year-old doesn't seem really interested. I mean, she likes lip gloss. That's about as far as she goes. So,
which is probably appropriate for.
Yeah, I would think so.
Because I worry about grown women that overdo it with lip gloss.
Yeah,
there are certain things you almost think of as being juvenile,
right?
My concern would be this, and I don't want to get. We generally keep things pretty light, and I don't want to get too heavy or anything, or too controversial is not the word. But let me read what Abby says first. Mm-hmm. Forgive me if this seems old-fashioned, but I think. This is Abby speaking. I think a kindergartner should be allowed to remain a child for at least a few years. I'm not only surprised that your son and daughter-in-law would send their 6-year-old to school wearing makeup, I'm equally surprised the school would allow it. Mm-hmm. See, nobody pointed that out. If somebody go, hey, go wipe that kid's face off before we take a picture. Of course, they probably afraid of getting sued or something, because parents don't have any good sense these days.
Might trigger or content warning.
Well, and that gets into something I'll talk about in a minute. When Sophie spends the weekends with you, Abby talking to the grandparents, don't you think you should make the rules about whether she's allowed to wear makeup? But I'd be sure they do. Yeah. They probably don't let her put it on or wear it.
No, I mean, that would be kind of bad, too, if the grandparents are like, no, you can't wear that.
But you know what? I hadn't thought of this when I was looking at this earlier. She's probably not putting that on herself.
A 6-year-old could probably put some of it on.
You think so? Okay.
Now, when mine goes for play makeup, she looks like, remember Mimi off Drew Carey?
Yeah.
That's her extended makeup.
So Abby tells grandparents when Sophie spends the weekends with you, you make the rules, and then somebody has to draw the line. But when you do, be prepared for some battles. Here are some of my thoughts and my problems with this. There seems to be in our culture, we want to be so open and so inclusive to everyone and everything now that it has gotten to our children. And what I mean by that, I'm being awkward. Maybe I should just be direct. I see a lot of things that to me come off as attempting to sexualize children.
Yeah.
Entirely too early.
Right.
And I even unfriended somebody recently, and I'm sorry to say it was a member of clergy who has a child around this age. I think he's about the age of this child, maybe a little older or younger. Maybe he's 4. Either way, around that age, kindergarten age or younger. And he's wearing a dress. And she puts on there because the heart wants what the heart wants.
At 4?
Yeah. And, here's my thing. And I'm certainly open to other opinions. I can be wrong. It's happened a couple of times in my life. But I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching and stressing gender. When did we decide that gender was bad? Now, look, I'm not talking about folks there are people that consider themselves transgendered, that they don't belong to the gender that they were given at birth or born with. I'm really not even talking about that.
Right.
I'm talking about this cultural groupthink that would have us, that almost seems like gender is bad. Mm-hmm. Androgyny is in.
Right.
Adam Carolla has a book that he actually wrote several years ago that's called In 50 Years We'll All Be Chicks. Mm-hmm. Kind of a lot of sarcasm there, but
yeah,
when it drips into the children and we start talking about, I've had people, want to tell me that children this young are already identifying as this type of sexual orientation or this type of transgender. And
they don't even know. I mean, how would they even know what that is at that age?
It strikes me, one, you have to, if you were going to agree with me, not that everyone would, you have to then accept the premise that we're doing that intentionally I think we are as a culture and a society. And the next question is why? And why we're sexualizing children.
When I was 6, I thought girls had cooties. I wasn't worried about anything
Exactly. Exactly. But I think it has become almost fashionable.
Yeah.
And I think there's a segment of our society. I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm not one of these, the country's going down the toilet kind of people. So don't hear what I'm not saying. But I really think there is a segment of our society that would be happy if we could turn all of our kids homosexual. Or even this person that seemed to enjoy that her son wanted to wear a dress.
See, I wonder too, how many of those people are just wanting to be seen as accepting of it in public? You know what I mean?
You nailed it 100%, buddy. You've said what I have said several times in the past couple of weeks. Let me say what you said and let me phrase it a different way. We know people, and there are so many people in our culture who are more interested in being judged on their position on things than on the real issues. I want you to judge me on my position and where I stand on things, just because it's right to be on the certain side of an issue.
Right. Oh, look at me. My daughter's gay, and I'm standing next to her proud. You know, everybody would. You know, your daughter. It's your daughter. It's your kid. You're going to stand next to him. You don't make a big deal out of it. You know? And
I'm not talking about people that are gay or transgender. I'm talking about what we're doing to children.
Right.
Or how we're addressing that in young children. And is it bad to acknowledge gender? When did it become a bad thing to embrace? I worry about it because I'm trying to raise a young boy, and I worry about this masculinity that's being lost, and I see it in him. Just plainly put, and now this has nothing to do with anything sexual, but just plainly put, he's soft.
Right.
He's a soft kid.
Well,
I love him to death, but
all of them, I work in the high schools, and all of them are like that. There's no, I don't know how to explain it, but when I was growing up, you looked at that guy that was manly, dressed in a suit, like your
class.
Right. Had the nice hat on.
With masculinity, yes.
Right. He might smoke a cigar and drink some bourbon. That he was a tough guy. There's not any of that anymore.
But with class, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're not talking about, being overly aggressive.
No, not like being a jerk or, any of that stuff, but just somebody that you could look at him and say, that's a man. That is somebody that, will stand up for himself. That's somebody that you can trust.
There's character that goes with it.
Right.
And maybe that's what it is. Through losing those things that are important about character, we're losing what it is to be masculine. I don't know, but does that affect our girls too? I mean, and our girls really get a mixed message,
right?
That about what is feminine and what's okay, but then are surrounded by so much, dirty booty music, and you know what I'm saying? They get it from both sides, and I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Where I see things and I go, why are all the people that were outraged about this not outraged? Huh?
Yeah. And I don't know why it's bad for someone to conform at some point. Why does everybody have to stand out? There should be some folks that just want to go with the flow. And
we have told people, and we have told our kids for so many years, that you can do anything you want to do. And you can be anything you want to do. You can be president of the United States. You can be an astronaut. Look, some of y'all, your kids ain't going to be president of the United States. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My kid is probably not going to be president of the United States. We need to quit telling our kids. And when did we decide that low self-esteem was a bad thing?
Right.
Low self-esteem provokes you to do better.
Right.
And I'm not talking about clinical depression.
Right.
I'm not talking about hating yourself.
But you got to have some sort of resistance through life, especially in your younger years, or when you get older. You you hit that brick wall hitting into the real world, and you don't know what to do.
Look, man, here it is. I'm gonna go on a rant for a minute, and we'll finish today. And you might have to jump in and cut me off. And I even debated. There was a time this week when I was so kind of wound up that I thought, I'm going to come in here in our studio, in our little office, and maybe make a video or record something. And I almost didn't want to have you in the room because I didn't want to say anything that I didn't want you to be attached to anything. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to go ahead and go for a couple of things, and I'm going to give you plenty of room if you want to correct me or amen me or get up and leave or whatever you want to do.
If you hear the door slam.
Yeah. So let me qualify with this. Everything I'm about to say is strictly, solely my opinion. It does not represent Randall's opinion, doesn't represent the opinions of my community, my church, my denominational system, or anybody, or just mine. I'm about to give you the answer to everything. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you how to fix this country right now. I have the answer. You believe that?
Let's hear it.
And it's going to be shockingly simple. Mm-hmm. Our problems in this country are not the things that we're talking about. Everybody wants to talk about race. Mm-hmm. And we want to talk about gender and sexual orientation. And we have created all the issues. But let me be kind of awkward for a moment. The issues are not the issues. The issues in our country that need to be addressed and solved with this open dialogue that we supposedly want are not race, they're culture. Mm-hmm. Now, what I mean by that, if I were to say that any given race were predisposed, or what am I trying to say? What is it that racist people say? When people say, like, this race commits more crimes than others. Mm-hmm. There's an expression that I'm missing. I'm getting so wound up, I'm inarticulate.
Like a stereotype? Or?
Yeah. We go, well, that race is predisposed to be, it's in their DNA.
Right.
It's in their race. They commit more crime. Or these people are lazy. Or these people are this. Or these people are that. Mm-hmm. Folks, it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with culture. Let me ask you this. And everything is based on how I want you to judge me on my position, right? We said that earlier. Mm-hmm. This is where we get things like the Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. Do Black Lives matter? Of course they do.
Everybody's life matters.
And that's the absurdity of founding something like that, is because you start with a premise or even with a base statement that nobody intellectually can disagree with.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So if I pad it by calling it something like that, I put it above criticism. The problem with it is the whole thing is based on a lot of false narratives.
Because then if you disagree with it, you're a racist.
Right. Hands up, don't shoot. Didn't happen.
Right.
Right. I saw something the other day where they're still talking about this guy in New York that, quote unquote, got choked to death, and the police wrestled him to the ground and choked him to death. Mm-hmm. They didn't no more choke him to death than the man in the moon. That cat had after he fought with the cops, they put a neck restraint on him. Now look, I know that sounds very euphemistic. Oh, it was a neck restraint. It's designed to cut off blood flow or limit blood flow to the head. And eventually, if you hold it long enough, it'll create unconsciousness. Mm-hmm. What it is not is a choke hold. It doesn't cut off air.
It's the old sleeper hold.
Yeah, exactly. Any wrestling fan knows that.
Right.
It does not cut off air. Okay. I can't breathe. Mm-hmm. You know how I know the guy can breathe? Because I can hear him.
Right. If he's talking, he's breathing.
And here's the next thing. Not only did they not take him to the ground, choke him to death, he didn't die there. Mm-hmm. He died on the way to the hospital having a heart attack because he's got diabetes and whatever else. So, look, and am I even saying all that was handled right? I don't know. Yeah. What I'm saying is, all the other stuff about that situation aside, just to say chokehold death, which I've seen in the media over and over, and it's not correct. It didn't happen. Back to point. And I've got people and friends in clergy that are so interested in being viewed as having the right position on race and the poor and the immigrants and stuff, that they will say and repeat things like, law enforcement are murderers and stuff like that. And they don't understand why I take those kind of things personally.
Well, I think that if you looked at law enforcement like you looked at, say, Walmart cashiers, what percentage of Walmart cashiers steal from Walmart versus what percentage of law enforcement officers are actually not good cops?
Right.
The law enforcement officers are probably in a very, very low percentage versus every other thing in this world. just because of what they do. I mean, they're put in charge of taking care of us. They're not there to arrest bad guys necessarily. They're there to protect you.
And even this idea that again, false narratives, that there's this rash of deaths in the country at the hands of police officers, and that these races are more. The numbers don't bear it out, but people have said it, and we've heard it so much.
Well, it's just the world media now. You can, if something happened like 10 years ago, something happened in San Francisco, and something happened in Florida, you wouldn't hear about it back and forth.
Right.
Now it's instant. You see it every day.
And then creates a narrative that it's some sort of epidemic, or that
right.
And it's like if we say it, that makes it true, and it's not true. All right, I've promised the answer. Let me give you the answer.
Okay.
And it's not race; it's culture. What I mean by that, here's the answer to everything: an emphasis on intact family is two things. Intact family and an emphasis on education. Okay? So let me ask you this. When we talk about the minorities and all these people that are getting killed by the police, and wait a minute, well, I was going to mention murder rates within racial communities, but some clergy told me that you can't talk about that. So some clergy friends, got mad at me when I brought that up. I'm like, what about the homicide rates? Oh no, well, that's just taking away from the point. I'm sorry. I thought all lives mattered, but I guess they don't.
Facts. I guess facts.
I mean,
don't
I've
really
been
matter.
told that you can't even bring that into the conversation. So let me ask you this. Let's talk about minorities. How much contact are our Asian brothers and sisters in our Asian communities having with the police? What are the murder rates, or as the media says? How many people in our Asian community are getting killed by the police?
I'd say that is very low, probably.
What about our friends, our brothers and sisters in the Jewish communities? What about our brothers and sisters in the Eastern Indian communities?
Probably extremely low.
You know what? They don't have contact with the police, largely. They don't have problems getting arrested, getting shot. They don't have problems getting murdered by their own people in their own communities, in Jewish communities and Eastern Indian communities and Asian communities. So here's what I'm suggesting. Why don't we take now, unless anybody think that I'm making this, I will make this a black and white thing, because you know what? I work in police in a rural southern area. You know who most of the people I deal with by race are? They're whites. So please, don't anybody hear what I'm not saying.
Right.
Because the problems that I'm talking about are just as bad in the white communities.
You know what I hate too is that now if you say something, people will try to pick it apart to make it something that it's not. Like they'll try to find the one part of it that could be misconstrued some way to make it where it offends somebody, and then they'll take that and run with it.
So because I work and have lived in a southern rural area most of my adult life, let's say 85% of the people I've ever, and this is probably correct, 85% of the people I've probably ever arrested have been Caucasian. Can I deduce from that Caucasian people are predisposed to crime?
No.
Absolutely not. And I would not make that statement about anybody else. I don't believe anybody is predisposed to it. I don't believe the problem, to say that a race is predisposed to something is racism. Okay? And we recognize that. So what I'm suggesting is it's cultural. Look at the cultures and the communities and the minorities that are doing well. The reason that I bring up the Asian communities, the Jewish communities, the Eastern Indian communities, just plainly put, culturally, they're kicking our rear end.
A strong family, strong education.
Exactly. What do they have? A strong emphasis on intact family, intact nuclear family, mother, father, at home, and when the kids come home, somebody is sitting at the table doing schoolwork with them.
Right.
Now, what's happening? They're becoming doctors, lawyers, they're going to school, right? They don't have problems with violence in their community. It's not race until we find a way to emphasize intact family. Look at when you watch sports, right? All these major athletes who are raised by grandparents.
Right.
My grandmama raised me.
She's a real MVP.
Right. Yeah. Good, godly woman.
Yeah.
And God bless them. I'm glad they have that. And those are people that come from good homes. I'm not saying they don't come from, of course, those are people that hit the lottery, so to speak.
Right.
You know, they're not all going to end up like that, but I see that, and I see it in the Caucasian community. It is not race. It is culture. And where we live, some of that has happened in the Caucasian community. Splintered families and little to no emphasis or concern about education at all.
Right.
So please don't hear that it's about race, but it is about culture. If we want to solve those problems, if you want to keep people out of trouble with the law, you want it, because we talk about the school to prison pipeline, How do we'll keep them in school, right? And keep our families intact. You know,
it all goes back to happiness, really. If before, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, my grandparents and some of my parents' generation, the baby boomers, if they weren't happy, they went out and found a way to make themselves happy. They went out and got a better job, worked harder, got a bigger house, took care of their family. Now, this generation is a little different. If they're not happy, they want to see who made them that way. They want to be able to pin that on somebody.
Right.
If it's race, if it's culture, if it's their socioeconomic standing, if it's their sexuality, whatever it is that they have working against them is the reason they're not happy. And now with that comes the drugs and alcohol and, living in squalor and all that stuff. But it's not their fault. It's whoever's trying to oppress them's fault.
And no mother or father at home, specifically no father at home. Fathers have done very poorly, very poorly. So then the other side of that coin is what? Who's doing well? The kids in those other communities, they're considered minorities, right? How come we don't hear about all the racism against them? It doesn't really exist. I mean, I'm not saying folks aren't, a good racist, if there is such a thing, a thorough racist hates everybody. He's going to hate everybody I've discussed. But they've got a cultural focus on family, and those kids are going to school. Their families are busting their rear ends, and the kids are busting their rear ends because they want to be doctors and lawyers and scientists.
You see the parents that are busting their tails so their kids can get ahead.
Yes.
And then you see the people that are busting their tails so they can get ahead.
And look at that. And the entire time, they don't see much of the police, do they? Shocking. Shocking. I'd love to, and let's look at the rates of how many of the folks in those community are in our prisons.
Right.
Shocking.
How many college graduates do you see in prison?
Hey, that's an interesting question. I don't know.
It's probably not a very big percentage.
That's interesting. Hopefully I've articulated that well enough. I've been carrying that for so long. I had to take another Facebook hiatus a little while ago over that because the whole idea about people wanting to be judged on their positions, and I see it we've really got a problem in our clergy community, and it runs on both sides of the political sway, so to speak. But
well, I think that as a Christian, you either have lost focus on loving everybody, when you try to judge these folks for what they're doing or whatever, you lose that focus on actually the love you're supposed to have for them. Even if you don't agree with what they're doing, you're still supposed to love those folks. And you're not supposed to agree with them wholeheartedly and just solidify their lifestyle, but you are supposed to love those folks, and there shouldn't be any hatred involved in all of that.
And here's the difference, too. I want to see people succeed.
Right.
And to me, when I look at anybody was arguing with somebody the other day about this school voucher program, and my whole thing was, why not invest in kids that wouldn't otherwise get an opportunity? Because if they succeed, we all succeed.
Right.
Anybody, the more successful people we have, the more kids that are becoming doctors and lawyers and scientists and all these wonderful things that you and I will probably never accomplish. Right. Why not, man? Why not? That, to me, if you're talking about just a business model, let's invest. I want to invest in people's success.
Right.
Now, all my friends, my clergy friends and my soft friends who would tell me, oh, you can't talk like that, or you can't talk about this, or they go, well, that's oversimplified. We should try to oversimplify it.
Right. Things are way too complicated.
You miss the nuance. And you know what I'm saying to them? I'm saying, you know who the bigot is here? It's you. Because what you're doing is you're looking at large groups of people and you're saying, well, we'll try to make up for you over here and over there because this is all we expect for you and from you.
Right.
That's a soft bigotry. is to say, well, we understand that because of where you are, you can't do anything else. So we'll, you know,
Well,
is that not ridiculous?
You're nicely keeping a whole bunch of people down.
It's a soft bigotry. It
Right.
really is, that portrays itself as compassion. That's not helping people succeed. Do we want to take people food and water and blankets and things like that when they're hungry? Yes, but let's help people succeed. Let's empower them.
And part of that too, like you touched on earlier, not everybody's going to be the president or an astronaut, but you know, there's some kids you see.
Yeah, quit telling your kids they can be anything. They can't.
I mean, there's some kids that you see that are going to be in some sort of manual labor. You know, they just don't have the intelligence or whatever it is upstairs to handle anything else. Well, you know, instead of trying to make them that, why don't you focus on what they're good at? Give them a chance to be a better person at what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. We want them to go to school. We want everybody to get, you know, a basic educational foundation. But that kid that you just described, what that kid needs to succeed, no matter what he or she is doing, is what I've already addressed, that you and I can't really give, other than we can preach it and beg people to kind of come around and understand. Family, focus on education. Family, focus on education. You empower people with family, a sense of family that they will carry, right? Not just because they had a good family, but a sense of family and community that they will carry with an emphasis on education, and we all succeed. And you know what? I'm just naive enough, I'm just gullible enough to think that a lot of these problems that we think are race problems and these things that make us so mad at each other, I think they'd go away.
You know, have you ever seen the trash man that comes by?
Yeah.
He is the happiest person I've ever seen in my life. I mean, he's always smiling, always happy, always waving to me when I go outside. That man is providing for his family. He's good at his job, and he's not set up for, you know, failure at some other point down his. I mean, he may be able to be the corporate vice president or whatever, but you know, he is extremely happy with what he's doing. And I think we've lost that happiness in the mundane. You know, nobody can be happy anymore by being something that is just a regular person. You know, you don't look at this guy as supporting his family, putting his kids in school.
And if you asked him, he probably thinks he's successful.
Right. Absolutely.
And you know what? He probably is.
He's probably more successful than probably 90% of the folks that are out there right now.
Well, let's bring this thing home. Thanks for letting me rant for a little bit. Do you think that was okay?
Yeah.
I didn't get too far afield, I'm probably glad that I let this thing rest a couple of weeks. Now I'm glad that you were in here. I probably really would have gotten carried away. You just have to be so delicate and careful in the language, because people will hear things that you're not saying, and they keep saying we're supposed to have an open dialogue about this, but honestly, this is the most difficult open dialogue I've ever had, because you're only supposed to say certain things and do certain things, and
they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
if you can avoid it, then don't talk about it.
Yeah, but let's not be those people, and let's care for one another and love one another and help one another, and it starts at home. It really does. That's so cliche and corny to say, but it really does. It starts at home, and we can help other folks. So, all right, well, we'll bring it home today. Man, we were all over the map today.
We went everywhere.
This is what happens when you sit down and don't really have anything laid out to talk about. It's like, well, let's just go where we went. So, from comic books to solving the world's problems, I guess. Read comic books, they make you smarter.
That's right.
All right. Until we see you next time, thanks for visiting. Thanks for hitting the download button. I'm Pastor Dave, sitting at the table with me, sweating, but he didn't have to jump in and cut me off. Anyway, that's Randall, and that's why I call him the armor bearer, because he certainly would have picked me up or would have shut me down if I'd have gotten too far afield. But I'm Dave. That's Randall over there. Randall, tell him who we are.
We are They That Believe.
Well, I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with fire up. I've never been with anything less than a 9. So fine, I've been on fire with Sally Field, gone fast with a girl named Bo, but somehow they just don't end up as mine. It's a death-defying life I lead. I take my chances. I die for living in the movies and TV. But the hardest thing I ever do is watch my leading ladies kiss some other guy while I'm bandaging my knee. I might fall from a tall building, I might roll a brand new car, 'cause I'm the unknown stuntman that made Redford such a star. I've never spent much time in school, but I taught ladies plenty. It's true, I hire my body out for pay. Hey, hey, I've gotten burned over Cheryl Teagues, blown up for Raquel Welch. But when I wind up in the hay, it's only hay. Hey, hey, I might jump an open drawbridge or Tarzan from a vine, 'cause I'm the unknown stuntman that makes Eastwood look so fine.